All right. Welcome to Halitics. I'm Hal Ginsberg. So glad to be talking to you. And yeah, it is Yom Kippur. It's the holiest day of the year for the Jewish people. And I consider myself, I suppose, Jewish in my own way to the extent that I have any religious affiliation whatsoever. That would be it. Certainly the way I was raised. Reform, certainly much more secular than any other way. But and it's been hard for me, to be perfectly frank, right? Being Jewish at a time when the Jewish state is a war criminal, a genocider, the doing the worst thing the world can do, that anyone can do, that people can do. That said, I'm an American, and look at what America is doing. I thought there was a fascinating interview. I don't think I've mentioned it. I did play some segments of an interview that Ezra Klein did with Ben Shapiro. And Klein got criticized for it, and I thought the criticism was a little bit unfair. I thought it was okay for him to platform Shapiro in the way that he did. I was criticized for asking the question, should Klein have platformed Shapiro? One commenter said, "You're the problem, even asking that question." The way you're framing it suggests that Klein shouldn't have platformed Shapiro. Of course he should have. And I didn't. My question was open-ended. It wasn't rhetorical. Current Affairs, Nathan J. Robinson, editor, said, no, it was wrong. He should have been much more confrontational when he interviewed Shapiro. And I watched the interview and I thought, well, he wasn't as that confrontational. I might have been more so, but he got a lot of good stuff from Shapiro that I think exposed the moral and intellectual bankruptcy of Ben Shapiro's ideology, to the extent he even has one. He was clearly, really wasn't coherent in what he was calling for or trying to defend, justify his policies. And we've seen this with Shapiro exposed also by Anna Kasparian on CNN. So I don't have a problem with what I saw. I didn't have a problem with it. And I was surprised that anyone thought I was criticizing Klein. I've been critical of Klein, and I'll be critical of Klein today. I watched his interview with Ta-Nehisi Coates, and I'm going to play some clips of it as we get a little bit further into today's program. By the way, it is Halitics 240-242-5646. Please do click subscribe. Hey, I'm at $3.99. You can be the 400th subscriber. Look at the hair you get every day with me if you every weekday if you tune in pretty much at noon, maybe 2 o'clock East Coast time on Tuesday. So you're not going to want to miss that. That's something you really only get here. Also, would love to talk to you, 240-242-5646. I'll be honest with you, it's been a little bit rough for me. It's been a rough patch for sure. Just the news has been so bad, and going through some stuff with Halitics as well that I haven't been happy about. Maybe I'll talk about that later on in the atonement section. We will platform, we will center the victims of Israel and American Western imperialism. Call it what you will. I sometimes get it into with some folks on the left. This is an area where I have burned bridges perhaps on the left, because I tend not to believe any one group or, any particular identity, ethnicity or what have you is responsible, is guilty, is worse than everyone else. Now, I do believe that the billionaire class needs to be reined in. I think that they're causing far, far, far more damage than anyone else, but it's because they're in a position to. It's not necessarily, although there have been studies that say that the very rich are morally, less upstanding, that their values are less ideal than most, that they're more situational. Their ethics are more situational. They don't believe in necessarily right or wrong the way many of us do. And I think that's because they believe they're not subject to the same. They shouldn't be subject to the same rules as everyone else. And partly that's because they aren't. They can get away with often literally murder. There's no question about it. If you're wealthy enough you can get away with murder, with multiple murders. If you're powerful, Barack Obama said he was really good at killing people. Who knew? Now you could say, well, he wasn't murdering them. Well, he was killing American citizens, among many others, extrajudicially. Call it what you will. Many have died, certainly at the hands of this president. I mean, most obviously in Gaza, innocent people. I don't have, numbers of people who were killed by the immigration, customs and enforcement people, but I wouldn't be surprised. We don't really know. People have been disappeared. So if you're rich, you're powerful, you can kill people. And we see that more clearly than anywhere else in Gaza right now. Death toll, this is according to ILCA. I'm not sure about that group. I was going to look it up and I didn't get a chance. Gaza death toll climbs to 66,225. This is 4:25 p.m. Gaza time today. So this means Israel has been committing its murders during Yom Kippur, during the Day of Atonement, when you're supposed to expiate your sins. You're supposed to take responsibility for the ways you hurt people over the past year. We asked the question, is there anything Israel, anything the United States could do to expiate their sins, this particular sin? Can their hands ever be clean? I mean, think of Lady Macbeth. Her hands can never be clean because she had murdered Duncan. That's the latest, my understanding of the reading of Macbeth is she's the actual one who stabbed Duncan in his sleep. Maybe it was Macbeth. We are not clear on that. But either way, she knows the blood of the king is on her hands and she can never wash it off. And of course, that's true. Murder is the ultimate crime. You cannot ever atone for it. You cannot make it okay what you did. You can't, you say something mean to somebody, it may always be with them, but you can apologize. They're there. But you cannot ever atone for, this greatest of evils that Israel has committed so many times over. And yet we still hope that they will start acting less evilly, and they're not. So even on the Day of Atonement, we have, what is it? I think I came up with a count from yesterday has gone up 77 more. The starvation continues. There's no relief for the people of Gaza, for the women, the children, the men. It continues the crimes against all humanity that the Israeli military and the U.S. government, whether Democratic or Republican, as it is now under Republican control, our crime is also ongoing and unexpiatable, I guess. Is that a word? Unexpiatable, perhaps. So all I can do is come on this program and, I haven't even been out with Code Pink much lately. I probably should be. I have a lot I have to atone for. But fortunately, I guess for my own moral sanity, I can't say there's people's blood's on my hands. But as a nation, we are really, in many ways, the great Satan. It's not an unfair, unjust characterization of what we're doing. 240-242-5646 if you want to join me. Would love to talk to you. What does atonement mean on this Day of Atonement? Well, reparation for a wrong or injury, reparation or expiation of sin. It's hard to think of any injury that could be more serious, more consequential than the utter devastation of a land. And there are zero efforts to repair it by Israel or the United States. In fact, what we're seeing from the current administration, of course, is an opportunity it sees to profit from this. And certainly Israel is doing the same thing, selling land, for example, that it stole from the residents there, selling it. I mean, this is just pure evil. This is pure, unadulterated evil. After 9/11, the pastor that President Obama whose church President Obama had attended before he was president. In fact, he wasn't even president then, but Jeremiah Wright talked about the chickens coming home to roost, the United States being attacked. And I said at the time, and I'll say it now, we were attacked. They hate us. That was the expression. Oh, they hate us for our freedoms. No, they hate us, the people who launched those attacks. They hate us because we kill them. They hate us because we destroy their lands. They hate us because we impoverish them. They hate us because we're destroying their ecosystems. Their entire ways of life are being utterly ruined by us. That's why they hate us. And the sins of the father and all that, I don't believe in collective guilt or collective punishment. But that's what we do, right? We see somebody, if they hurt us, and then we see someone who looks like them, we want to hurt the person who looks like them. That's human nature. We blame the tribe for the actions of the tribesmen. That is what people do. Sometimes it makes sense, sometimes it doesn't. I was talking yesterday to Jake. I think he may have said on the air, maybe he didn't, that too many Jews have failed to distance themselves from Israel, that so many Jewish people have wrapped themselves up in their Judaism and in that allegiance that we as Jews have been taught to the state. And I agree with him, but the fact that many Jewish people continue to deny the reality of the Gaza Holocaust doesn't mean two things. There's two things that doesn't mean. One, it doesn't mean that all Jews are denying it. And in fact, so many aren't. Many of the campus protesters, ones who aren't Jewish, have said, oh yes, there were lots of Jews with us. Two of the most prominent opponents of Israel, I'm not prominent. Two of the most prominent opponents in the whatever space you want to call this, podcasting, YouTube space, are Jewish. Katie Halper and Max Blumenthal. And not, I shouldn't just limit it to Max, because his partner Aaron Monte is also Jewish, his partner at the Gray Zone. And Aaron Monte's father, Gabor Monte, I don't know that he was a survivor, but he has been outspoken in his opposition to Israel. Synagogue was attacked last night, as Yom Kippur services were being observed in the UK city of Manchester. I guess there's a relatively robust Jewish community in Manchester. And I'm not going to get into all the details. 2 people were killed. It was by a knife-wielding assailant, and he left a man bleeding out on the floor of the synagogue. It's unclear whether I won't say it's unclear. I don't know from reading the Reuters article, which is where I learned of this, whether the assailant was a Muslim, was an Arab, was motivated by their utter dismay, disgust, activated by the horrible images coming from Gaza? I don't know that. I don't know. I can speculate. That would be my guess. May or may not have been a Muslim. I don't know. But I'm not prepared to ascribe this act of terrible violence, a murder. I don't think it was a political attack. I mean, maybe it was terrorism, I guess. I don't believe that the victims were selected because they have some sort of connection to Israel. We know that Israel routinely targets journalists, children, leaders of other countries, and kills them. I don't know that that's what happened here. I don't believe it's what happened here. I believe what happened here is that a human being had reached the boiling point, had reached their tipping point, had seen enough of the United Kingdom's continuing support, albeit with the acknowledgement that they recently, I believe, voted to recognize Palestine in the UN, but the continued support of the Starmer government for Israel, the continued demands by many synagogue leaders, by many rabbis and other Jewish leaders, that the Holocaust that Israel's committing is not a Holocaust, and that if you call it that, if you call it a genocide, you're somehow anti-Semitic. I don't accept, without much more, that this attack was based solely on the religion of the victims. For example, if I were to meet the killer in a different environment than a synagogue, and we were talking, and I said, I'm Jewish, I don't know that I would have been stabbed to death. Now, I might have been, but I am very reluctant to ascribe these types of attacks in the current environment where so many synagogues have signs up that say, we support Israel in its struggle for security. No, Israel's struggle is one to eliminate, eradicate, wipe people off the planet because of their ethnicity, because of where they live, because they're not Jewish. So I don't support Israel, but if you see that sign, that's basically like a swastika to Muslims. And I'm not going to say that a Jewish person who shoots somebody because they're wearing a swastika is whatever. If it's in Germany, that they hate all Germans. Yes, you should not kill people randomly, of course. But to just simply say it's anti-Semitism, and look how Reuters writes this up. Levels of anti-Semitism rose to record levels in the wake of the October 7, 2023 attack by Hamas on Israel. And then as an afterthought, in Israel's subsequent war in Gaza, that they acknowledge has widely demolished the small Palestinian enclave. Okay, anti-Semitism does not rise because Jews are attacked in a brutal fashion. Anti-Semitism arises because Jewish people do really bad things that piss people off, or because people are raised to be anti-Semitic. Neither of those are subsumed within or are part of the Hamas attack on Israel. When a group of people are attacked, there's widespread sympathy for them. As much harm as the United States has done over the centuries. After 9/11, the world actually mourned. I believe there were ceremonies in Tehran to express compassion, empathy, solidarity with the victims of 9/11. None of the perps, by the way, came from Iran. None of them came from Iraq. They came from, I believe, Afghanistan, Saudi Arabia, maybe Egypt. Now, if I'm wrong, correct me. 240-242-5646. But if the Reuters said, hey, levels of actually, in the immediate aftermath of October 7th, there was sympathy for Jewish people, or certainly for Israelis who had been attacked. There was some sympathy. They immediately flushed all of that down the toilet. They weaponized their victimhood, which Jews seem very wont to do, as do all groups, by the way. They weaponized their victimhood and used that to justify mass slaughter on a scale we haven't seen in 90 years, 80 years. If Reuters said, hey, levels of anti-Semitism, how about to say this? Violence against Jewish people rose to record levels in the wake of Israel's ongoing genocide, then people might say, well, is that even really anti-Semitism? I mean, I guess it is in a way. It is, right? Because you should never blame the, an individual for the crimes of someone who shares one trait with them. That's wrong. Collective guilt is wrong. But it's understandable. And I say to my Jewish co-religionists, renounce Israel. Renounce Israel, not just because you don't want someone coming into your synagogue and stabbing you, although that is a reason to do it. Renounce Israel because Israel's wrong, because what Israel's doing is wrong. It's evil. It's immoral. You want to start atonement. Let's say you haven't done it yet. Today's the day of atonement. Now's the day to do it. I get how hard this is. It's weird for me because it isn't hard for me. But I know for so many people, their Jewish identity is so important to them. And it's part of who they are. It's wrapped up in who they are. And they may have, their social life, at least in part, is the synagogue, the women's group, the men's group. That's woven into the fabric of who they are. And if you say what we're doing here by supporting Israel, by refusing to condemn Israel, we are tacitly approving the ultimate crime. It's hard to do that. It's hard to say that because you're going to alienate people. I get it. And I don't have an answer to that, except to say sometimes you have to do what's right. Chris Hedges said, maybe we need to be willing to be a little bit more uncomfortable. And that's easy for me to say because for me, it's not uncomfortable. But I get for many people it is. I truly do. Okay, Day of Atonement. Are we seeing any atonement by the United States for its crimes? I can't think of anything really. This story, I don't know, for whatever reason, it's not brand new. It's about a week old now. I think this was published September 25 in Current Affairs, which is, Nathan J. Robinson. And I disagreed with Robinson, by the way, about whether Klein should have platformed Shapiro. But I think this is a really important story. So we're going after Cuba. We're telling the countries around the world, don't let those Cuban doctors into your country to help deliver babies, to help if there's an epidemic, to help provide humanitarian aid. The U.S. is saying, you do that, we're going to cut you off. We're saying that to Caribbean countries that are extraordinarily poor, much poorer than Cuba, by the way. Countries like Haiti, some others as well, that do rely heavily on Cuban medical support. And we're saying, we're going to punish you if you do that. And some of those Caribbean countries are pushing back and say, go ahead. We need these doctors. The U.S. is still, this government, Biden at the very end of his term, I was going to say first term, there ain't going to be a second for Joe Biden. At the very end of his first term, at the end of his term, he did take Cuba off the America's enemies countries list or whatever they have it. I don't know. There's something like that. I don't know what it is exactly. He took Cuba off that list. Trump put it right back on. And Trump doesn't want any country. Now, apparently, this is in part, or it is because Cuba benefits from providing it. In other words, it does charge the service. It's not like it gives them away. And there are some questions about the way Cuba treats these doctors and nurses and personnel. Do they get paid enough? There's been some apparently independent analysis that says, yeah, they should treat the doctors better. But of course, Cuba's incredibly poor. They don't have a lot of money. They don't have a lot of resources to help pay for these services. And they claim, they say they do what they can. What we do know is that the countries that take advantage of the doctor services that employ them, these Cuban doctors, benefit greatly from them. And they want them. And we're taking them away. Now, if the U.S. was serious about the concern, really concerned about the doctors, the treatment of these doctors, they would work with Cuba and say, hey, let's make sure you got enough, right? We're going to not embargo you. We're not going to cut you off. You're an island nation. There are many needs, necessities that you don't have right on your island. We're not going to make life harder for you. We see that you're doing some good things. Your healthcare service, in terms of the universality of it, in terms of the efficiency of it, we could learn a lot from what you do. Well, we don't really need to learn a lot. We just know that if you don't have a for-profit healthcare system, you get better care for less money. But instead, what this administration is doing, even more than other previous ones did, is trying to punish, hurt, lash out. How dare they? How dare they reject the free market, crony capitalist model of delivering health care? How dare they? We're going to cut out. We're going to punish them, and we're going to punish anybody who hires them. That's the Trump administration response. I've told you before, a basic premise of Halitics is that Trump's administration is awful. We must go in a different direction. He's dishonest. He's corrupt. He's murderous. We see all of that. He's vindictive. We see all of that. The problem we face is we don't really have any kind of opposition. They're two sides of the same coin. This is why I'm so angry at Ezra Klein, because he refuses to acknowledge. He somehow thinks the Democrats are his friend. Maybe they are. He sees them as we. No, they're they. The Democratic leadership, the Republican leadership. Not the voters, not the rank and file, the elites. They're they. And what we have to do is fight for we. I was trying to make that point. Now I'm going to atone for a little bit, for some of the things I've said, my criticism, at least my harshest criticisms of Charlie Kirk. I have, I had a very bad reaction to Kirk. because I did not see him, and I do not see him as somebody who was fighting for the people that came to see him. I think he was dividing people. I think that he was profiting from that. And I have a big problem with that, for sure. And that's why I was critical of Kirk. Now, I'm not critical of his, quote, followers. I was in the moment because I was like, why are you mourning this guy? But I get it. He did listen to them. They certainly perceived him as on their side. And many of the folks that perceived Charlie Kirk as their ally don't have a lot of allies. They're struggling too. Their lives aren't great either. Just like so many that we on the progressive side claim to be championing. I have been very critical of, let me say it this way. Yeah, I questioned the outpouring of grief and sympathy for Kirk in the moment. I did wonder about that. I will say this, and I'm not going to judge anybody. When John Lewis died, the former civil rights leader, I was questioning the outpouring of grief for him. I recognized the good that he did. But in later years, he had used the goodwill that he had rightly built up to promote for-profit healthcare, to undermine Bernie Sanders, to endorse Hillary Clinton, somebody who pursues policies that are terrible for his constituents. That's where I have a huge problem. That's what bothers me. John Lewis, Charlie Kirk both did the same thing in that regard, and that was very upsetting to me. I want us to join out what I said. Sometimes what I say sometimes makes it harder, makes it less possible for me to build or to be part of, let me say it a different way, a coalition of poor, struggling, and working people. It's tougher because people get angry. They don't understand why I'm criticizing somebody they care about, who they believe is on their side. Now, I may disagree, but I can't tell you. You believe who's on your side is on your side. All right, 240-242-5646. I would love to talk to you. I want to play this clip here. This is why, but yeah, no, I was wrong. I was wrong in the way that I reacted. Okay, here is a video from Al Jazeera that came out just, I think it was pretty close to the wake of the October 7th. And it was in November, after Israel's brutal onslaught. And by the way, let me say before I play the video about Kirk, I really am persuaded that he was coming out against Israel, or more and more questioning the Zionist narrative. And I honor him for that. That's a good thing. And it's a loss because he could have possibly turned many, I think he was in the process of, or let me say it a different way. Many of the conservative youth who followed Kirk also were pushing him. So he was following them as well. And that's how a movement should go. Leaders should lead, but they should also follow. Now, many other issues with that movement, many criticisms of it, but to the extent that so many in the conservative youth movement are turning against Israel, I want that to continue. And I would certainly join with them in anything to cut back our support for Israel. I'll work with anybody if on a goal that I believe is worthwhile, is worthy. And nothing at this time is more worthy than our breaking with Israel. I still haven't seen any evidence that Israel was involved, but, and I don't speculate, and I am not going to guess. I think seems like the most plausible explanation is Tyler Robinson. If he comes out full-throated denial, there's evidence, he has an alibi, I'll revise my opinion. This is why the United States is punishing Cuba right now and its exportation. Is that a word? I think so. Exportation of medical services.
The Latin American School of Medicine provides full medical scholarships to people from low-income communities in the Americas, Africa, Asia, and the Middle East. 74 of today's students are from Gaza. Samar has lost dozens of relatives this past month.
When I go to...
So what Cuba's doing here is training Palestinians to become doctors. And I assume nurses as well. Cuba trains medical students. And the United States apparently doesn't want Palestinians to become doctors. Israel doesn't want Palestinians to become doctors. Doctors save lives. Israel's taking lives.
With my friends and love, I say, no, I can't. My family under attack. How can I live in peace and love and speak to people?
Hatem lost 40 relatives after an Israeli F-16 fighter jet bombed his family's apartment block.
We are constantly on edge. We can't stop looking at our phones. We are just waiting for more bad news.
Since it opened 2 decades ago, more than 30,000 doctors have graduated from the school. The idealism of this project is striking. Cuban life expectancy has fallen in recent years as there's no longer enough money to buy all the medicine the country needs. And yet the Ministry of Public Health continues to train doctors from 94 different countries here without charging a penny.
And so, pretty amazing, isn't it? Now, apparently they must get some revenue for it, but are we then altruistic? What this does is it really does show up. It shames the Trump administration. It shames American medical, the medical establishment, that Cuba is providing this low cost or free medical education to doctors or, aspiring doctors all over the world. It shames us. People don't like to feel shame. They don't like to feel guilt. They don't like to feel that they're being shown up for the greedy, selfish, self-righteous narcissists that they are. So they lash out and they project and they say, oh yeah, Cuba's the enemy. Yeah, Cuba's. All right, I want to go to this guy, Klein. Let's finish with him. I want to play some of this video here. He is interviewing, or he and Ta-Nehisi Coates are talking. This is in the wake of the article, it's an opinion piece that Klein posted in which he extols Charlie Kirk for doing politics the right way. And Coates had a big problem with that. He wrote about why he had a problem with it. And so, to his credit, I guess, Klein puts Coates on to discuss. And I'm not going to play all. There's over an hour discussion. But I was really intrigued by this caption, this headline here. So why, and I blew it up, why is the left losing right now? And this is what the chapter that we'll play mostly of is titled. But it's a misnomer. That's not what Klein is talking about. He's not talking about the left losing, although, of course, we are losing. But that's not really who he identifies with. Let's play the clip. And I'll interrupt it throughout. Okay, here we go.
There are two things that are true about what President Donald Trump said at Charlie Kirk's.
We're going to jump ahead because this is, for some reason, it's not where it should be. All right, let's go to 11:05. Here we go.
And then my progeny pick it up and they keep it going. I am descended from people who, in their lifetime, fought with all their might for the destruction of chattel slavery in this country. And they never saw it. They never saw it. In my personal belief system, they died in, defeat, in darkness, and so I guess the privilege that I draw out of this, the honor that I draw out of this, is not that things will necessarily be better in my lifetime, but that I will make the contribution that I am supposed to make. The fact of the matter is, as horrifying as, that the killing of Charlie Kirk was, and as horrifying as the feeling is, this moment that we are in, an era of political violence, and I don't want to sound flip here, political violence is the norm for the Black experience in this country. It just is. I don't even mean like the Malcolm X, Martin Luther King variety of it, right? Which is the norm too. You would be hard pressed to have a conversation with a Black person in this country that is a descendant of slavery and not have them be able to reach maybe right here or to tell you themselves, look, my uncle, my grandfather, my great-grandfather, they lived in a small town in Mississippi, in Tennessee, in Alabama. They got into some sort of dispute with a white man, and either they were lynched or we had to run.
All right, so I'll stop it there just because I thought that was a very powerful passage. I did want to play it. And, Coates is obviously saying, hey, what happened to Kirk is really terrible, but it's not unique. There's been political violence, especially against my community, for centuries. Political violence. And of course, he's right. And then you come to the question that I always want to ask is, how do we stop this? How do we change the dynamic? And I think the answer to that question, unfortunately, is not provided. It's not generated by this conversation. I want to just see if we can get how Coates started that off, because it's very interesting. Let me see if we can get this right here. Maybe this is
question
the wrong
actually
spot.
Why are we losing?
We're losing because they're...
So he says, why are we losing? That's how he headed off that conversation, or he began it. Why are we losing? And the caption there, the subheading was, why is the left losing? And Coates answers, let him.
There are always moments when we lose.
See, that feels very fatalistic to me.
So he says we're losing because we lose.
Why are we losing?
We're losing because there are always moments when we lose.
All right, so he's saying there are always moments when we lose. And to give an example of that, he provides this story, the stories that so many African American families have passed down, the lore of the violence that was used to terrorize them and keep them powerless, dependent for generations. And he's saying, yeah, we lost then and we're losing now. And my answer is, and I agree with Klein when he says, well, that's fatalistic. Like, it's just the way it is. I don't agree with Coates. I do think there's fatalistic in this regard. It's not that African Americans just have to accept this or that this is the norm. They did what they could, and unfortunately, for so many, they never were free. They were never freed, and many were killed or lived their entire life in bondage, slavery, or terrible circumstances. This is why, and by the way, that crime is one of the reasons I don't, and we haven't atoned for this crime either. But that crime of slavery is one of the reasons I'm not one of those Jews who say, oh, the Holocaust was the worst thing, the greatest crime. It was a terrible thing. But there's lots of atrocities. It's not unique in the annals of history. It was a bad thing, a very, very, very bad thing that happened. And there are lots of, not countless, this is pretty far to the edge of the worst things, but it's not the only worst thing. It's not even unique that in this modern era, and now we see it happening again. So I don't judge or view that crime as this some unique crime or the worst thing. It was a bad thing, and lots of other people in this country right now are suffering far more than Jewish people are in general. So That's where I think we need to focus. But I disagree with Coates to say that this is we lose because sometimes we lose. No, we lose because bad people have hijacked the government and no one is fighting. No one with real power, real influence is fighting for poor, struggling, and working people. That's why we lose. But that's not what Klein is getting at all. He doesn't view the loss as policies and procedures that have eroded American security, that have made people less safe in many ways because of the proliferation of guns. All sorts of other, although, crime rates are down as far as I can. We have far fewer murders now than we did 30 years ago in this country. So I don't want to overstate the gun violence. We are a violent society. We've always been one. In many ways, we're actually less violent than we were 30 years ago. I think there are many more mass murders, mass shootings, yes. But no, I don't accept that this is going to this has to happen, that there's going to be a back and a forth. Klein has a different explanation. My explanation is concentrated wealth and power have created this dystopia. Here's Ezra Klein.
And in writing them off, we are losing and we are unable to protect ourselves, unable to protect them. Right? I think.
Let me see if I want to get this back.
Why are people preferring this to us? And
so he's saying, why are people preferring this to us? Meaning, why are many voters voting Republican, not Democrat? And that's where I have such a huge problem with Klein. Because his we, his us, is Democrats. And that's just flat out not my we, not my us. It is for him. But as long as he's going to perceive, we and us as the Democratic Party, let me say it this way. This is Democratic Party is part of the problem. They're not the solution. They're not we for me. They're them. I get it. Ezra Klein is a multimillionaire. I guess he views Clinton and Biden and Harris as we. But that's we if you're a multimillionaire, if you're elite. Why? If they're your we, then you shouldn't have a New York Times interview program, because your we is a tiny subset of the population. Or if you're going to get a New York Times podcast, then why don't they have a host whose we is poor, struggling, and working people, candidates who are going to fight for them? Why aren't we hearing a podcaster at the New York Times whose we is, we lost in 2016 when Bernie Sanders was defeated by the entire Democratic establishment? That's where Ezra Klein just totally, in my view, is clueless. For him, the we is losing because Hillary lost, because Biden, went totally senile and Kamala lost. That's not we. That's them. And this is not atonement either. Atonement is you acknowledge, the people that I've championed are bad people. The people I've championed are warmongers and corporatists. And I have been. They did really, really bad things. That's why we lost. That's where Klein just, for whatever reason, that's why he has the job he has. Because if he took the side of poor, struggling, working people against Democratic elites, he would never have this platform.
Political actor. And I think that from when in 2016, we lost to Donald Trump the first time, very narrowly.
So I see that statement completely flummoxed me. We lost to Donald Trump. No, we lost to Hillary Clinton, okay? There was a candidate who was on the side of we, the American people. And their name was not Hillary Clinton. We lost to Hillary Clinton and the Democratic establishment, which then lost to a, crude, narcissistic bore who's done terrible, terrible things. But Klein is enmeshed. And I think this reflects such remarkable intellectual incuriosity that you view yourself as tied to Hillary Clinton. Let me play more.
Popular vote, right? And then in 2020, we almost lost to him and began seeing we were losing.
I just don't. We almost lost to him. Joe Biden is we. It makes me just want to. Honestly, I feel like I've gone nowhere. My entire media efforts have been trying to break people of the notion that the Democratic Party represents them, that the Democratic Party is we. Since sometime towards the end of I shouldn't say my entire media career. No, that's not true. Because when I came into media in 2005, I was fighting against W. And I thought, yeah. And I like John Kerry. And there were times when I liked Democrats. But sometime towards the end of the first Obama term, I really began to realize no. And also the party changed. The Democrat Party got worse and worse. I realized that the Democratic Party was not we, but the Democratic Party was we for the people in the party. That the Democratic Party did not brook dissent, the Democratic Party did not navel gaze, the Democratic Party would not take ownership of the many bad things it did, its greed, its selfishness. It was always going to blame and point fingers. So seeing Ezra Klein platformed 500,000 views for this video is incredibly upsetting to me, because my entire goal has been to pull people away from this binary thought that there's two choices only, and one is good and one is bad. Now, many of you who are Republican, if you're watching, you think Trump is good. You thought, or you think Charlie Kirk was good. I don't agree with that. That is part of the problem in my view. But it is no more part of the problem than the idea that the Democratic Party is good. That Hillary Clinton and Kamala Harris are we. No. They were I. They were two people who wanted desperately for their own ends, their own purposes to be present, and would say and do pretty much anything that they thought would help them get that with little or no regard for you. So the fact that Ezra Klein is a Democratic shill, a flunky, whatever, that's who he is. But the fact that the most powerful, the most influential media in the world, I believe it is, puts this guy front and center, saying we when he's talking about Hillary Clinton, says we when he's talking about Kamala Harris, when he says we when we're talking about the neoliberal, warmongering, genocidal Democratic Party. I don't know where we go with that. Where's the alternative media? Where's the options that are better? They're very few and very far between.
A bunch of voters we thought we were fighting for, right? Losing more.
How could you have thought you were fighting for those working class voters? How could you have thought that, Klein? Those free trade deals that Hillary supported, not every one, but a lot of them. She sometimes wouldn't support them. She supported MFN for China, which was devastating. Her husband supported NAFTA, which was devastating. There were 3 free trade deals under Obama negotiated that were awful. Colombia, South Korea, Panama. These were awful for working people. What the Clintons did in Haiti was so bad. How could you think they were on the side of the working class? How deluded could you be? How far up your butt is your head that you would think that? And this is why we lose. Because we don't demand true working class champions or just simply refuse to vote whatsoever. This is why we lose.
Working class voters losing non-white voters, right? Something was changing, but we won, so okay. And then in 2024, we really got our asses handed to us. And we let...
And I just don't... How could you... Again, Kamala Harris is were you on her campaign? Folks, this is what we've got to reject. This entire notion that these politicians, that this political party that has so consistently betrayed you, rejected you, treated you like garbage, they're not you. All right, let me play. He has a clip there. He plays Hillary talking about the deplorables. And I will play it. You know why? Because I want to... Maybe we won't play all of it, but let me see. I'm going to skim forward it. Maybe I don't have it in this part of it. Where he asks Coates what he thinks of it. And I just want to, because I spent a lot of time going after Klein. And Coates also misses the boat because of he's pretty single-minded focus on race. And that's not the right lens. It's part of it. But the right lens is class. That elites use race, they use gender, they use sex, they use nation of origin and religion to keep people divided who should be together. And that, for whatever reason, Coates doesn't get either.
They're offensive, hateful, mean-spirited rhetoric.
This is what she's talking about.
He tweets and retweets. They're offensive, hateful, mean-spirited rhetoric. Now, some of those folks, they are irredeemable, but thankfully they are not American.
What do you think when you hear that?
She probably shouldn't.
So she calls them deplorable. We didn't play that part of it. Irredeemable. What do you think?
Do you think it's true?
I mean, it's probably not how I would say it, but, there are things that I would say, I probably would say what I said earlier, in the interview about the force of, and as I've been saying this probably since as long.
No, it's such poor framing. And I've said this over and over. No, the response by the question, is it true? Look, all of us have good and bad in us. Yes, there is racism and xenophobia and bitterness in Trump supporters, sure. But there's also the same exact qualities in Democratic voters and Democratic supporters. The question you should ask isn't how bad are these people or how do we, talk to them differently? Should we not insult them? What policies did we pursue that turned them off? And that's where Coates just doesn't get it. He just won't go there. He's not willing to say, yeah, okay, there's, Trump's able to reach these people with hateful rhetoric, but the reason they're reachable at all is because we betrayed them in the first place. Because we, meaning our government, not we. Well, yeah, we, if you want to say Hillary Clinton is we, yes, she did betray working people. So, my fondest hope going forward is that these leaders, these influencers will at some point, it's going to be really tough because they're paid to promote division. They're paid to present the other side as the other. And Klein is saying, oh, no, we shouldn't do it that way. We shouldn't talk about them that way. But his remedy, his response isn't, let's talk to Charlie Kirk about why the people that you talk to deserve Medicare for all. And if you don't champion it, then what's wrong with you? Why aren't you championing Medicare for all? That's what the message should be. And you would even find ground. You would find common ground with Kirk. You talk about ending the genocide. Kirk might well start to agree with you. But when you just attack and insult people and treat them, and when I say attack, I mean working people, struggling people, everyday people. When you do that, or you try to get over on them, which is what Kirk is saying, well, we shouldn't insult them, we shouldn't attack them. But what you don't propose, Klein, is meeting their economic needs. That's what you refuse to talk about, is addressing their insecurity, their legitimate human desire to have enough. And also their legitimate human envy at people like you who have so much and live so well and are so arrogant. But you don't acknowledge that. And that's why we're failing as a country. All right, that'll do it for me today. If you celebrate Yom Kippur, Happy Day of Atonement. You can see the Jewish style lettering over the bombed out Gaza City. That's what we should be atoning for. I'm not hearing it. To the extent you can, enjoy the rest of your day. I'll be back tomorrow.